Hey folks, Papa Boris here, playing some more Through the Ages, or rather reviewing some more Through the Ages. This was the first three-player game to finish from the Group 1, Round 1 of the 2025 Through the Ages World Championship. I was up against Sakic and Gangwon Teacher, who I do think were the two strongest players in my group. At least they were stronger than Sheeter, leaving myself out of the equation. Turn 1, Sakic grabs Library of Alexandria from this board, which seems perfectly reasonable, and I actually have an issue with my first round draft. What would you do here? I think the clear move is to take Colossus and Julius Caesar. They're just a really nice combo. You get a ton of strength for free, you draw extra cards in H3, get a little bit of help with colonies. Julius Caesar gets that military action, you're more likely to draw colonies. I don't actually remember what I was thinking taking Colossus and Urban Growth. Like, yes, Urban Growth is cool when you get a rock, but I think missing the opportunity to grab Caesar with Colossus was sort of silly on my part. So we go ahead and pass the turn here. Gangwon grabs Acropolis from the middle, continuing of the community's disrespect toward the Hanging Gardens, and he's not got any problems grabbing Caesar. It goes nicely with the Acropolis because that does provide a strength, so he gets a lot of free strength. It's a cheap wonder to build, helps reduce the cost of governments. Just a solid start for him. I think I biffed the draft on this one though. Now, on Sakic's turn, he has got to take a leader, and of these three leaders, he chooses Aristotle. I think this actually is the last one that I would have chosen. I would have taken either Ashoka with the bonus rocks and food, or Hippocrates with the bonus yellow workers over Aristotle, because Aristotle can be kind of unreliable. But it seems like Sakic likes Aristotle. I do believe he took him in another game as well, or maybe this group just likes Aristotle. Overall, this is not my favorite leader. It was really strong in the olden days, but with the expansion, I do think he's gotten weaker compared to the other ones. But anyway, he grabs Aristotle, plays him because he has nothing better to do, even though Aristotle doesn't do anything right now, and then he passes the turn. So on my turn, I grab Ashoka. Actually, if that wasn't here, if Sakic had taken Ashoka, then I would have had to pay 2 actions for Cleopatra, but I do like Ashoka. The issue is that he doesn't do anything in the first turn, and he's also a little bit unreliable because you need different colors of cards to get the benefit. But I play a mine, I raise population, and for my last action, I do put down Ashoka so that, if the cards are right, maybe I can take Theocracy and Claire Christopher or something here and get some different colors of cards going. I can start getting extra rocks. And notice I did not do the Urban Growth turn 1 play. I could have built a lab here, but I actually want to keep this card in my hand to contribute to Ashoka's bonuses. All right, so Gangwon is up. On his first turn, he plays it totally normal. He plays his leader. He doesn't play it normal. I got this confused with something else. He takes Engineering Genius A. I don't agree with this. I don't agree. I think you have a really clear line here. It's play your leader, build your mine, raise population, grab Urban Growth for the lab next turn. This doesn't make any sense because you're paying 2 actions to take 2 rocks. It's the same as paying 1 action to take 1 rock here, except that 1 action to take 1 rock is better than 2 actions for 2 rocks because 1 action per rock is a horrible, horrible ratio, so doubling up on it is a mistake. Now, I kind of get it. You don't want to give your opponents an Engineering Genius A in the first row, but this is the kind of move that makes more sense maybe in a 2-player game than in a 3-player game. Because in a 3-player game, you're hurting yourself to deprive one person of an Engineering Genius, and then the person you didn't deprive of the Engineering Genius, in this case, me, because Sakic would have gotten it had he done the standard line with Urban Growth, gets to benefit from that as well, only they didn't have to burn actions for it. So I do think Gangwon messed up here. For his last action, he makes a mine, so now he's at risk of not being able to capitalize on free temple or free warrior events, and he just, spent 2 actions to take 2 rocks. So we pass the turn. I will say, by the way, Gangwon I think is a strong player. He's the guy who's played over 2,000 games. I do think he's a strong player, and I think if there is a weakness in his game, I think it's this early game stuff. He had that weird thing with the rich land in one of the games, and here he's taking Engineering Genius A. I do think he could become even stronger. I think he might be a better player than me overall, and I think he could be even stronger, really climb up there if he fixes up these weird early game glitches. So Sakic is up, he builds a lab, grabs Theocracy. Now normally that's a little bit of a weird move, but it does sort of make sense with Aristotle. You want to be getting the extra science, and there's not much else for him to do. The alternative here could have been perhaps to raise population and grab Isabella because she's a great leader and just pass on Aristotle, but I understand why someone might not want to do that. It's actually what I probably would have done here, is just like, screw it, just 2 actions for Isabella, nothing better to do, let's just make it happen, get the extra rock, build my wonder sooner, and so forth. But this is not a crazy play. Now, the rich land A I don't like. It's speculative, he has nothing to do with it at the moment. I think here you just need to raise your population so you're not vulnerable to missing out on events, and so that you're not, paying an action for a rock, which is just a horrible trade-off in the first place. So everyone now has made some weird early game moves in this one, but it's me, and here I play an event. I'm trying to get a free temple. Unfortunately, I get the free warrior, and I don't actually want a free warrior, so everybody misses out on that, but my opponents both miss out on it, but I don't really get to capitalize on it either. I don't think it's correct to get a free warrior here at the expense of building your first lab. Now, I think the correct play here is just to take Isabella and play her. Ashoka can give you a rock if you have 2 different colors of cards in your hand, and a rock and a food if you have 3 different colors of cards. Isabella just straight gives you an extra rock. So I decided to go bold here and try to get that extra food from Ashoka before transferring to Isabella, and I think that's an error. I think doing goofy plays to try to maximize Ashoka when you've got Isabella right there is a mistake. But I decided not to play her. Instead, I take Alchemy because it's just a good tech, build my first lab, and then I'm now vulnerable because I didn't raise my population because I spent 2 actions taking Alchemy. Now, I don't think taking Alchemy is a problem in and of itself. I think it's totally fine here. I think this was a calculated, necessary risk. You could have chosen Irrigation instead, but I do think that Alchemy is better this early because Science is really strong. And in a 3-player game, there are 2 copies of Selective Breeding. So as long as one of your opponents gets Irrigation, there's a really good chance you can get Selective Breeding unless some hate drafting goes on. All right, so anyway, I pass the turn, and it's over to Gang Wan. He's got Irrigation available for 1 action. He builds his Wonder, so he's looking pretty strong here with Caesar. He grabs the Irrigation, which makes perfect sense, and he raises population. Completely standard turn. I would have done the exact same thing. We're over to Sakic. Now, he has the opportunity to grab Eleanor and give up on Aristotle. We all get some free science from the event he plays. He raises population and grabs Code of Laws. I'm not a huge fan of this play because if you're going to have Theocracy, which you spent 2 actions for, then you're not really going to be able to play it and Code of Laws. On the other hand, you could say, well, Theocracy is a sunk cost. Let's just do this because I have the science for it and get an action. So it is a reasonable play. I'm not a huge fan of it. I would have preferred to grab this leader, kick out Aristotle, and get started on my Wonder. It's also worth considering Drama here because in this game we do have Gaudi and Marlene and Chaplain. So Drama could be nice down the road. But he grabs the Code of Laws, he plays it, so he's got his civil actions fixed for the early game, and with his last action, not much to do. He does take the Drama. You could consider building the first stage of the library, but I think Drama is a perfectly fair grab here, especially with Aristotle if you did choose to keep him, because that gives you a science. So now it is my turn. I don't decide to play this Rebellion event because I don't have a happy face, so I don't want to get screwed by losing the actions here. I raise population. I decide not to play Isabella still. I build 1 stage of the Wonder, and then I grab Monarchy. Now, this is a bit greedy because I don't really have the science to support it long term. Like, if I research it next turn, I have no science left over. But this does give me 3 different colors of cards, so now I'm getting an extra food and an extra rock. Is it worth it? I don't think so. On the other hand, what else was there to do with 2 actions? Not a whole lot. But alternatively to building a stage of the Wonder, I could have researched Alchemy and upgraded one of the labs. Now, I still would have had 2 actions left over, which were a little bit underwhelming to spend. There's no good cards to take here. Can't take the leader. You could take Knights and Theology or a speculative rich land. So I don't hate the Monarchy grab here, but it is worth noting that even when you have the science for it, if your science is low and you have other things that you need to be spending your science on, it's an action that comes with costs. They may be justified here, but it's just something to consider. All right, so Gang Wan plays an event as Caesar. We all get some free food. He doesn't play a second event. Caesar can play 2 events, but I guess he doesn't have one or didn't have one he wanted to play. He takes the Knights. He researches Knights. He makes a Knight. And the question is, does he have Medieval Army? Does he have Medieval Army? He takes Bread and Circus to fix his happy faces later. Does he have Medieval Army? No, he has Heavy Cavalry. So it's a weird drop. Normally, I say don't play a tactic until you're ready to use it, but no one ever does Heavy Cavalry, so I guess that one's okay to play just to get it out of the way so you're not throwing cards away, and so it's ready to go for when you get it eventually. I admire Gang Wan for going for this tactic, because getting 3 horses is pretty friggin' hard. It's a lot of workers, it's really expensive, it's hard to get any kind of payout from it, but he really goes for it this game. All right, so Sakic offers me open borders, which I obviously take, so now we each can actually defend against Gangwon's attacks. With a single defense card and 3 military actions, you can make up a 4 strength difference, so Gangwon must not have been happy about that. Sakic raises population and pays 3 actions for knights. I don't agree with this move. There is stuff to do here. For 3 actions, you can build your wonder right now. Yes, I guess there's a worry of like, oh, what if my next opponent takes knights with the Colossus? I suppose, but look at my science. The knights aren't coming down anytime sooner. If they are, I'm crippling myself. I think this was a wild play. Now, what was there to do? Well, build your wonder. And I think he also raised his population here, right? So you only have one other action. I mean, hell, just take iron. You know, there's no need to do any complications here. You got this rich land that helps you with the iron. You know, you got Aristotle still giving you the science for the iron. I think this knights was a wacky move. He researches the knights right away, plays a knight. Doesn't have medieval army, so is it 3 to my 1. I do have to watch out, like, because now he can, like, aggress against me. So I decide to finish the Colossus. I didn't have to. I could have researched alchemy and upgraded both labs. But I finished the Colossus just so there's no funny business from anybody. And then after raising my population, I do commit to the monarchy. This means that I have to wait an extra turn for alchemy, and it's debatable whether that was a correct play or not. What I could have done is researched alchemy and upgraded both labs, then I would have been able to do monarchy next turn, but then that would have meant not doing the Colossus. So I decided to fix my actions first, and then just accept the delay of the alchemy. Is that correct? It's debatable. I grab iron because it's right there, and why not? And since I did monarchy, I don't need the code of laws. I just raise my population and call it a day. So now I am ready to have a pretty crappy turn, honestly, because I don't have the science to get alchemy or iron down. But I am getting 2 food from Ashoka. Whoa. And then it's over to Gangwon. On his turn, he raises population, builds a lab, grabs urban growth, which is a little strange because he just built this lab. This is a speculative one. What else is there for him to do? He doesn't have much science. These technologies are, kind of hard to take. Yeah, he doesn't have a whole lot to do here, so fine. Taking the speculative action card is not crazy. And then with his last action, he grabs Code of Laws. It'll be forever till he can actually do this, but I don't hate it because there really wasn't that much for him to do on this action. He was kind of screwed with the first row of a bunch of techs when he doesn't really have any science to work with. All right, we go over to the next round. It's back over to Sakic. He plays an event. We all get some free military cards, and he grabs Jan von Shishkebab. Now, this is a really strong leader because he gives you military action, which is strong. He gives you strength, which is really good, and he also gives you culture. So he gives you pretty much everything you'd want from an Age 1 leader, other than like a civil action. Okay, but none of them grant those except for stinky old Saladin. So really, anything reasonable that you might want from an Age 1 leader, he gives you. Now, one thing to note about this leader is that he's really, really strong with the medieval army. This is a good tactic in general, but what you can do with Jan is play the medieval army. He also grabbed iron here for an extra science, and because it's iron. So he got rid of Aristotle after getting this last science. He got the medieval army, raised population, and built a knight. So the way Jan works is that your farms count as infantry or artillery, not for strength, but for the purpose of tactics. So you have 3 warriors with Jan, just from your starting setup. And when you make 2 knights, each of these knights pairs with one of the warriors. So it's a really efficient way to generate a lot of strength. So now I definitely have to worry about him not canceling, but abusing our open borders agreement, pissing me off and stealing a whole bunch of crap from me because, he does have a lot of military actions and he's still drawing 2 more. So I'm feeling a little bit nervous, but luckily I flip an event and we get rocks. And that's a big deal because right now I have 7 rocks, but after getting 2 more rocks, I can actually build the Himeji Castle in 1 turn. And that is really huge. So now it really honestly was just insanely lucky for me that this happened because I didn't have the science to research any of my techs. I had nothing to do this turn. And this flip of 2 rocks from the event gave me something incredible to do. Now, could Sakic still attack me? Of course, but that would piss me off. I might cancel the open borders agreement. I might just sacrifice my warrior, which gives me 4 bonus strength with the castle. It's not a super profitable thing necessarily for him to give up playing an event where, who knows, there might be juicy events in the deck. So I feel like it's a pretty good deterrent. And it's also giving me 2 culture now, which is just a fantastic thing all around. It's really great when you can get culture efficiently while also accomplishing other objectives in Age 1. I get rid of Ashoka because age could run out by the time my turn comes back, and I grab Birch Land, which is actually perfect here because I'm going to be getting iron one day, and then this will help me build it up. I throw away a whole gas ton of cards, and then Gang One's up. So he plays an event. It's historic territory, which he wins with a worker or a warrior and 2 defense cards, which is whatever. So he gets 6 culture and a happy face. He plays irrigation. He grabs Joan because it's time to change your leader. He could have considered Genghis here, but even with this heavy cavalry, it's actually going to be a little bit tricky for him to get up to 3 military units. So Joan of Arc I don't hate, just the guaranteed culture versus the Genghis's conditional 3 military action, and of course the qualitative value of seeing events before you play into them. He grabs Engineering Genius, which is not speculative. Since he replaced a leader this turn, the Taj Mahal is free to take under construction, and he takes it. I'm not a huge fan of this wonder generally. Great. Yep, great. No, that's cool. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of this wonder generally, but in this particular case, when you're able to take it alongside an Engineering Genius and build it next turn, yeah, that's fine. You can see that the culture, he's in the lead just because of the events he's been playing, and so getting further ahead with the Taj Mahal, as long as he can, fix his economy at some point, he's going to be in decent shape. He builds a knight here, working towards that heavy cavalry. Upgrades a farm. That's it for his actions and his resources, so he passes the turn here, and it's over to Sackage. What will the big man on campus do? What will he do? What will he do? He plays an event. And it's good harvest, so a friendly one. We all get some free food. He builds the library. This is his last opportunity to do so, and with his last 2 actions, he researches iron and upgrades a mine. Perfectly reasonable. I will note, though, swordsman must have been a hard pass. You really want these swordsmen because it turns on the classic army. With the knights that you already have, you just need a cannon and you can get Napoleonic army. So swordsman's a really good card. Getting into those age 2 tactics, which in some cases might even be enough to last you the whole game. So passing it here is tough. I don't hate that he went ahead and contributed to his economy. But I will point out, had he built this earlier instead of researching these knights for 3 or taking them for 3 actions, then he would have been able to do things here like take an irrigation or take the swordsman. So obviously he is getting value from these knights now because he's got 2 armies, but Jan wasn't even on the board yet when this happened. So if anything, that was a pretty speculative play on his part, I still think. He passes it to me. I'm thrilled to see the swordsman here, because I do need something or other. And on certain borders is an amazing flip. I do get very lucky on this, because if Gang One had flipped it, I would have lost a token, but instead, he loses the token, and Sackage gains the token. So I'm going to be thrilled to grab the swordsman. I research alchemy, and upgrade it. Now, I could have upgraded iron first. It's a tough call. Perhaps it is correct to get your rocks first, but the idea of then just having 2 science for even longer just felt really hard. I also raised population. I've got 1 extra action here, and with that, I just grabbed printing press. The printing press is, a bit of a speculative play, but Gaudi and Darwin are both in the game, and both of them really like printing presses. So I feel like, if it's a wasted card in my hand, then fine. I didn't have a whole lot of else to do with this final action. That was, by the way, an advantage of doing iron instead of the alchemy, because with iron and the rich land, I could have upgraded 2 mines and not had to waste an action taking printing press. Alright, we're up to the industrial age. I draw my Colossus cards. Gang One is up. So Gang One, he's doing okay on culture, but he's got crappy science, crappy rocks. He needs to build this wonder, and he's also got basically despotism here. The 3rd military action is just from Joan of Arc, so that is temporary. So what does he do about these issues? Well, he raises population. He builds a temple with urban growth to give a strength from Joan, so he's not in last place on tie breaks anymore, and also to pump up his culture a little bit. And he builds a stage of the Taj Mahal. Grabs patriotism, which I'm not a huge fan of, actually. The reason is this is 2 actions for 2 rocks and a military action. That's okay, but there's swordsmen right here. They're fantastic. I get it, you've got heavy cavalry, but for the future, this could be better. Your science sucks. Breakthrough's better than patriotism. Breakthrough only costs 1 action for 2 science versus 2 actions for 2 rocks. I think this was the worst of the 3 cards that he could have taken here. Hell, I mean... Oh, no, he doesn't have the rocks. I was going to say building a stage with Engineering Genius was a better move, but he couldn't do that because he had no rocks. But yeah, Swordsman or Breakthrough, I think were both better picks here. Gang One passes the turn, and we're over to Sackage. So Sackage plays an event. Everybody gets some free science. He upgrades a mine, and he takes Cannon. Now, that's aggressive. He took Knights for 3 actions. Here he is taking Cannon for 3. He's passing on Swordsman and Breakthrough to do it, both of which are solid. He could be raising his population. I mean, hell, if he wants, he could be taking Alchemy. So it was an aggressive move, but, it is a military tech, and it'll be crucial to have. So It's aggressive. I don't think I have the chops to do the move like that, but I don't also hate it either. So he grabs Breakthrough because he's happy that Gangwon left it. He passes the Swordsman, but he might have, a tactic by this point where it's like Cannon and Knight, or just the 2 Cannon, which is what I have. So it's not necessarily a mistake at this point to be passing on Swordsman in his shoes. I play Iron. I upgrade a lab, or a mine, I upgrade another one with Rich Land. I got 2 actions left over. What to do with these actions? Well, I don't have anything great to do here. Main candidate is take Breakthrough for 2, which doesn't feel amazing, but, it's a thing to do. However, I decided to go for the reserves and the Cultural Heritage. Now, the Cultural Heritage is whatever. I don't care about throwing this card away. But the reserves, I can take 2 food, because I've got this thing here where I'm stuck. If you're unlucky, what happens is you end up with 3 food when your consumption's at 2, and so you're not generating food, but you're using up 3 blue tokens for this. Now, I've got Isabella giving 2 blue tokens, so the negative of that is mitigated, but, there's that extra food I got from Ashoka, just kind of screwing me over here. So taking the reserves for the opportunity to at least get 2 extra food and clear this stuff out for an extra worker seemed valuable to me at the time. All right, I'm the last player, which is on strength, which is a little bit scary. But I don't get aggressed, and there's no event that flips. Instead, Gangwon offers me the trade agreement, which is incredible. It's a good play, I think, on his part, because it is hard to offer yourself the rock and your opponent the food, since a lot of times people don't want the food. But he could see that I need 1 extra food. It actually is a big deal to me, then I don't need to play that reserves card. And so I accept, because it's valuable to me, and then he gets a rock. And so we both profit ahead of Sakich. He spends all his science going down to just no science whatsoever to fix his civil actions, which, is okay. And now he grabs Alfred Nobel. Now, people seem to love this leader in my group. I don't think this is a great leader. I don't think he's worth taking for 3 actions. But to be fair, in this case, he does need science. And the strength is helpful too. So if there's ever a time to take Nobel, this is the time to do it. So he grabs him, plays him, and he upgrades his last farm. So his food's fixed. His actions are okay. He is making 4 rocks rather than 3, thanks to the agreement, so they're fixed-ish, and his science is sort of fixed. So his economy's better than it looks. He's in a situation where he just needs to not fall behind on strength, maybe improve his economy rather than fixing it, stay ahead on culture, he could have a good game. So he passes the turn here, and it is over to Sakich. Sakich plays an event. It's new deposits. We all make a bunch of rocks for free. And on his turn, what does he do? Well, he decides, let's start getting points. Strength leader, start generating culture. Drops drama, builds a temple. I don't actually know why he builds a temple here. Why a temple? Why not a drama? Well, anyway, he raises population, upgrades a mine, and he does also build a drama. I'm just not entirely sure why he built a temple and a drama instead of a drama and a drama. He did have the extra rock for it. It could be that he's fishing for Gaudi. I'm not a fan of making speculative moves like that, especially for leaders that a lot of people would like. Like, I would like Gaudi with my printing press, and Gangwon would like Gaudi with his bread and circuses and already temple and labs. So, banking on that, like throwing away a culture per turn to maybe get some extra benefit with Gaudi is a little bit spendthrift in my opinion, but all right, it's what Sakich goes for. It's not horrible. It's just 1 less culture per turn. He is the culture leader at this moment by a significant margin now. He's getting 6. He's making more culture per turn than both opponents combined, so it's reasonable. Now, I kind of hate it, but I'm going to take selective breeding for 2 actions. Yes, you could wait. Yes, Gangwon technically doesn't need it, but I don't want to risk anything. Not getting this would just be brutally bad, so I take it. I make sure I have it. And then what to do with my turn? I'm a little bit corrupt. I have only 3 actions left. How do I deal with this? Well, I upgrade my final mine. I upgrade my final lab. And now, with my last action, I research Swordsman. Now, I don't have to do this. You could take Rich Land here to facilitate getting selective breeding. Hell, with your garbage science, you could even take Breakthrough. Those were reasonable decisions. The problem is that I'm actually out of hand space. So I only have 5 hand space, so I can't actually do any of those things. This printing press and this cultural heritage are kind of hurting me. So I guess I could have played cultural heritage, but instead I decided to get Swordsman down, make a sword, and upgrade a sword so that I am not in last place on cleared non-tie breaks. And then, just kind of bemoaning the fact that I left some juicy yellow cards here on the table for the sitting. All right, it's Gangwon's turn. He plays an event. And it's Reign of Terror, which is great. It's a good thing I went ahead of him, because otherwise I would have lost on tiebreaks. But instead, Gangwon loses a population, and you'll notice he has no idle workers. So he actually loses a mine here, which is great for us. That means that he's down to 3 with this international trade agreement. He finally finishes his wonder, so he is now generating culture at a pace approximately equal to Sakic, although his rock situation is significantly worse. He's making 3 rocks to his opponent's 6 and 7, respectively. With his last few actions, he raises population, grabs journalism, which is a little aggressive, but it is a way to generate science and culture, if you can just kind of manage the rock situation going on here. And he grabs rich land, which is a little bit weird. What are you going to be doing rich land on? Is it coal? Well, yes, maybe someday you'll be able to get a coal here, so it's a little bit speculative. I don't hate this plan, but I would have been more inclined to take the frugality because it's guaranteed to be valuable. Although you could say, well, your opponents don't want coal. Your opponents have iron. So the odds that the 2 coals in the deck both get hate drafted from you are pretty low. So if there's ever a time to take a speculative rich land, this is the time to do it. He finally builds a knight! He does it! He acquires the heavy cavalry! So now he is the strength leader by a margin. Now 5 strength isn't crazy. With my military actions, I can defend as long as I have a single H2 defense card. So it's not like nuts, but he is ready to get the benefit from these events. Here we have a wealthy territory, which I win, thanks to my Colossus, and a defense card, and a swordsman. So I get 6 rocks and 3 blue tokens, which is awesome. Sakic decides it's time to fix his civil actions, takes Republic, plays Republic. Now, his action situation is not as good as it looks because these 4 military actions are really just 2. One of them is due to the Open Borders Agreement, which is going to end at the end of the age, and the other one is from Jan von Shishkebab, which is also going to expire at the end of the age. So his actions aren't entirely fixed on the military front, but it's really great for now. There are still 35 cards left in the H2 deck, and his civil actions are tremendous. Now he's obviously going to take selective breeding. Oh, hey, it's my turn against Cheater. He's obviously going to take selective breeding here. He can't research it yet, but he needs to fix his food at some point. He puts Harvard under construction, which, you know, I don't take this wonder a lot, but I don't hate. Because, I mean, it is 3 science a turn. He is going to be able to finish it next turn, especially because he's got this engineering genius here to knock 4 rocks off of it. I think if there was a time to do that, this is the time to do it, so credit to him for finding a move that I think I actually could very well have missed. Well, the turn ends, and it's over to me. I play an event, and it's a developed territory, which I also win. So now I've got a yellow token in the bank and some extra science, all of which are very welcome. I just pay a rock with Isabella and drop a swordsman. I now have no military units, and I make a pretty aggressive move. I take Gaudi for 3. I am falling behind on the culture here. My science is fine, my rocks are fine, but I'm like really starting to struggle on the culture front, and I'm nowhere close to being able to win this game on military. The safe play here was to grab Maria Theresa with her free rocks and then like a little bit of science and culture for growing her population, and, you know, leverage selective breeding for that. But I decide, you know what, let's just take Gaudi, put him down, and start generating some culture. So the way it works here is on this turn, I make a temple, so that's 2 culture with Gaudi, and then I raise my population. So I'm ready next turn to do the selective breeding, get some more food going, and then play the printing press and make a printing press. The printing press is also worth 2 culture, the first one with Gaudi. So I'm trying to at least keep up on culture generation, even though I am definitely behind on raw culture. I also make a couple of swordsmen so that we get back to 8 strength, and I pass the turn. Alright, Gang 1's up. He plays an event. It's Crusades. I lose 4 culture. He gains it. That's sad, but it's not the end of the world. It doesn't affect the board state, so I don't mind for now. Although that is an 8-point swing between me and Gang 1, right? Because he got 4 and I lost 4. So pay attention to that. Let's put a bookmark on that. That is an 8-point swing that happened there from that Age 1 event. All right, he raises population, builds a second temple. I don't actually understand this line. He will need the happy face at some point, but the happy faces would have been better gotten with bread and circuses. This is just a culture. It seems a little strange to me. But I mean, culture's culture, so I guess he's thinking, hey, let's just get some culture. And then he grabs Kanman, which... Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. That's bad commentary. The reason he built the temple was so that with the Acropolis giving a science discount for each urban building, he can get Kanman this turn. Now, that is a great play. He doesn't really care about this temple, but it was the right thing to do in order to get Kanman down right now. Okay, I figured it out, everybody. Really proud of myself. For his remaining turn, he grabs the cannon, which makes sense. It also means I'm not getting cannon this game. He takes reserves because he's got a bunch of actions, so take free rocks is fantastic on a very low rock production, and he passes the turn. Sakic plays an event. His cultural influence, so now we're about the same. Luckily, I was able to just in time catch up before I got bombed to oblivion by this one. On his turn, he's going to build Harvard College, so now he's got his science well and fixed. His culture's great. All he needs is food, and he's already got the selective breeding. He just needs one more science. So the fact that he's one science off here is a little bit annoying to him, I imagine, because he doesn't have that much stuff to do. But, you know, he just uses his actions to take a bunch of cards. This makes sense for fixing happy faces. The architecture, I think, is a little bit... Yeah, it's not... It's just a tough tech. You really have to have a lot of extra science and actions to afford the luxury of doing this. But whatever, I don't hate it. What else was there to do? I mean, take patriotism. It's just kind of strange as well. I mean, he takes it anyway. I guess you could have taken an urban growth or a reserves, but it's fine. I don't mind the architecture grab. He passes the turn and it's over to me. So I play an event. I don't know why I played this event. I don't know if it was some event. I think if we scroll back, it doesn't show you in the interface so you could see it, what event it was that I played. But this one's brutal. If I had had one more strength, I would have gotten 6 science because I would have beaten Sakic on a tiebreak for the second strongest player. That does hurt. But instead, oh god, you know what? We're going to have to restart this round anyway because it's the bug. If you pause it during the event thing, then the game freezes, or the replay thing freezes, and then you have to click through. Okay, hang on. What was it that I played? Oh my god. Oh, I remember what this is. Oh, Jesus. All right, I make the dumbest mistake of my life. I play terrorism. All right, this is like a case study on why you should just goddamn never play terrorism. Look, I'm behind on culture and culture generation. Let's play terrorism. I get to blow up a building for each of my opponents for free. It's a great event. It's worth giving my opponent 6 science for. Yeah, absolutely. It's worth noting, if I had just a simple fighting band, if someone had played a fighting band this game, I actually would have gotten that 6 science instead of Sakic. But in any case, I play terrorism, give Sakic 6 science instead of myself, and we'll put a bookmark on what happens with that. So, all right, we drop the printing press. I make a library, so now my culture generation is good. I'm still going to be behind for a while because it's not ahead of my opponents, and I'm starting off with a gap. What to do with the rest of the actions? Well, we've got food. We need food here, so we drop selective breeding. I do take a moment to take select team sports instead of upgrading my other farm, and I think this was the right call. I'm going to stand by this one until the day I die, because this is very cheap, science-wise. It fixes my happy faces, which I'm going to need pretty soon. It gives a culture with Gaudi. I think that was a time where it was worth delaying your progression to grab this extra card. All right, it's Gangwon's turn. He plays an event. We've got points for science. It's basically a wash. He grabs coal because he desperately needs it. He researches it. He upgrades using a rich land, so he gets his rocks to a much more solid state. What to do with the last few actions? Well, here he just grabs a breakthrough for 3 science, which is fine. He does need the science, and he's got a lot of actions to burn. And then he just grabs a couple, or he grabs another useful card, the urban growth. That can help with journalism. And instead of taking reserves, he raises population. It's fine. I might have considered the frugality and the reserves, or the reserves here, because he is going to need the food. The irrigation's about to run out of steam if you look at where he is in the token bank. And then rocks are always good when you have 7 actions, but this is fine. So he pays down his action debt, has a bunch of yellow cards here. Oh, hold on a minute. I'm wrong. This is the hand limit. He could not have taken another yellow card because he was at his hand limit. I always forget about that. So yes, he was correct because he had nothing else to do besides raise his population. All right, Sakic is up. He finally gets down selective breeding. He builds a farm. He grabs strategy, which is smart because he is going to need these military actions soon as H3 hits, and he's got the science for it. He, in fact, gets it right now. He grabs navigation and gets that down right now as well, so he's ready to get colonies, and he's getting a lot of static strength. Totally fine. He doesn't, finish upgrading his farm, but I also think, that's probably what I would have done, but I think it's reasonable to grab these techs here and get a bunch of flat strength. My turn comes around, and I raise population. I research team sports. I make a team sport. The 2 strength is very handy here. I'm getting an extra culture now. We've got 4 culture coming in from Gaudi, which is phenomenal, and 2 actions left to go. Well, let's grab the opera. It's a bit greedy, but the science is cheap, and it will be worth a lot of culture, and it goes really great when I transition, if I do transition, to Marlene or Chaplain. So I think this is a reasonable grab, and then I do still have an action left over to finish upgrading my other farm. Now, what did I not do this turn? I did not take Rifleman, which is a little bit frisky considering I desperately am going to need to do something. My hope here was that either Rifleman would make its way back around to me, this one up here, or that I could just somehow make do with the H3 military techs. Now you might say, Papa Wars, that's a little bit of wishful, fanciful thinking there, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't you take the rifleman? Yeah, it's quite possible that I should have just taken a rifleman here. Instead of raising my population, I didn't need to raise population here. I had no chance of corruption. Instead of raising population and instead of taking opera, it probably would have been safer to grab the rifleman here. It just feels so bad because I already have the swordsman, and what I really need are horses and cannon, and it's like, well, the riflemen aren't going to fix my game on their own. All right, Gang One's up. He plays journalism. He makes a journalist, so now he's getting a ton of culture and pretty good science. He gets the bread and circuses down. This is his last chance to do so because they're about to get tossed out when the age ends. He takes the rifleman because he needs them, so that is a fortunate thing for him that rifleman was there for a single action. He grabs efficient upgrade to finish upgrading his final coal mine, and he takes revolutionary idea for some more science, which is perfectly reasonable, and passes the turn. Sakich is up. He also never took swordsman. We flip the autonomous territory, which Sakich wins at great cost, but he gets extra actions for that at the cost of an army. Seems perfectly reasonable. He raises population, makes a warrior, grabs scientific method. This is a bit of a strange move, I think. I don't think you need scientific method here because you've already got 6 science per turn. I mean, yes, you can get more science per turn, that's great, but there's a lot of other scientific things you want to be getting here, so that may have been a little bit excessive. But on the other hand, he's got a ton of actions now with this territory, and there's not many yellow cards to grab, so yeah, there wasn't much for him to do with his actions. In fact, he decides to get his science down right now, so he upgrades a lab, upgrades his other farm, grabs Napoleon for some strength. It's a risky move because Napoleon doesn't give you any culture. You know, it could be tempting to maybe wait for Darwin. But he decides to grab the strength. He takes the rifleman, of course, and the wave of nationalism. So he is ready to roll across the military field. Now, I don't get any riflemen, which of course is extremely sad, but at least I have cavalry here. I play an event because I'm trying to get that terrorism to come out. We get an economic progress, and what do I do with my life here and my piddly 5 actions? You could consider the ocean liner. If I had 7 actions or something, I would. But I decide that, I'd rather just like make workers with food the honest way because I've got this big stockpile here. Let's use my limited actions on something else. I get the cavalry, I raise population, I build another lab to shore up my science a bit. And then after raising population again, I research the cavalrymen and then just make one. So for now, the flat strength is kind of keeping me in this. And I play the medieval army that's in the common pool, so I'm not drawing any cards this time. But, I am for the moment the strength leader. So hopefully there's some really great event here that I can take advantage of, just kind of come in and snipe it. Well, Gang One does not play an event. He does get an Age 1 arena to get closer to me on strength and fix his happy faces. He researches the rifles, blows up a lab, and then makes a rifle. So now he is again the strength leader. He upgrades his final coal mine, all just completely standard stuff this turn, nothing crazy. He gets some food, and he grabs urban growth. Now that is maybe to build a journalist later for some extra science and culture. There's nothing really to upgrade. He could have taken cavalry, and that actually is worth considering, just to have access to all tactics. So maybe that would have been a little bit more precise than urban growth, but all in all, a very solid turn. And we're over to Sakich. So what has Napoleon got going over there in his noggin? Well, Sakich has actions for days. He raises population a couple of times, plays the wave of nationalism. Now he's actually in last. So he took it last turn while he was in the lead. Now he's last by just a bit. He gets 6 free rocks. Researches cannon, makes a basically free cannon, researches rifleman, upgrades a warrior to rifleman. He's got the Napoleonic army, so now he's a real solid strength leader with that 6 strength from Napoleon. And after making an AJ theater to also shore up his culture and building up a lab to shore up his science, he grabs efficient upgrade. I would have maybe considered taking cavalrymen here just for the hell of it, just to have all tactics available, but I don't mind the efficient upgrade here. It'll get the organized religion up and running to fix his happy faces, which are going to be a problem. All in all, he is sitting very tall here. Sakich is in a commanding position. He's got middle of the road culture, fine on culture generation, and we're under a lot of pressure. We can't just keep on building culture to get ahead or stay ahead. We've got to worry about what he's going to do with all these cards and the wars that he might be able to declare. Okay, so it's over to me. How do I deal with this situation? Well, I play an event because I'm trying to get that terrorism out while I'm still in last. We get Politics of Strength. So Sakich draws 5 cards, and I, who was in the lead for a moment, lose my card draw for the next turn. If Gang One had flipped this, I would have actually been strong. If Sakic had flipped this, I would have at least not been hurt. But instead, I flip it, so I am the one who's screwed by it. I raise population, I make a knight, I get multimedia, which is a little bit greedy, but, it is a way to get more science and culture, and I do need to do that. If I just, leave this be, I'm going to just simply lose the game when the clock runs out, and I'm clearly not beating anybody up on military. So it's a little bit of a desperate move, you might say. But after grabbing it, I take the reserves for some rocks and an urban growth to help build these expensive buildings that I do not have an architecture for. So my turn is over. I'm hoping that, if there's going to be any attacking, I've deterred Sakic enough from attacking me to focus on Gangwon. Gangwon raises population, he makes a rifle, and he plays the classic army, which I am delighted to see, because I can use the classic army, where my setup is kind of the inverse of his, so I will get 4 strength from that in 2 turns. After playing the classic army, he grabs Revolutionary Idea for some more science, which is completely reasonable. He takes computers, which is kind of weird, honestly, but Sid Meier is right there. So, okay, maybe you can get computers down and get Sid Meier and make a bunch of culture. And he grabs reserves. And movies. And he plays Revolutionary Idea for 4 science. I mean, he's got to use up his actions. Now, the one thing that's worth considering here is taking Gandhi. If he had taken Gandhi, then he knows that Mr. Napoleon here would basically be focusing all his attention on me. And Gandhi, unlike Mr. Nobel here, generates culture. So a lot of times when you take Gandhi, this 2 culture isn't that great because you're replacing a leader who is generating more. But this would actually be generating an extra 2 culture and making him safe. He's got, a decent amount of strength. He's got the cannon. He can copy Napoleonic army. Like, he can, build up with Gandhi enough to not be blasted out of the world, and also generate culture while he's at it. I think it was worth considering there. But okay, he had computers and Sid Meier in mind, so he passes the turn. And I'm actually really sad he took so many cards that Gandhi drops into the clear out space, so I won't be able to take him. I was actually considering Gandhi myself. Sakic plays an event. It's not terrorism. I lose a colony. Now, it's not the end of the world that I lose a colony, because I can just lose the wealthy territory and lose 3 blue tokens. It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. I'm not losing yellow tokens from the bank. And after raising population, he gets architecture down and the organized religion. He fixes his happy faces, and he decides to snipe Sid Meier. So that computer grab from Gangwon doesn't end up working out. Would Sakic have done this if Gangwon hadn't taken computers? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's worth the hate draft or not. But okay, he can generate 4 culture himself with Sid when the time is right. But the time is not yet. He makes a warrior, and he puts the Manhattan Project under construction. This will be worth 10 culture for him, for his science generation, and 13 strength. So it's looking really scary here on the war front. He passes his turn, and it's my turn. What do I do to deal with the situation where, wars are about to start being flung around? Well, I have kind of a problem with my actions. My actions suck. All right, everyone's got way better actions than me, so I decide, you know what, this is the day. Let's take Mandela. He's worth 2 culture, which is a hit from Gaudi making 4, but he is giving me an extra civil action. And I can make up some of the culture loss by making team sports someday. This turn, I play the multimedia. Oh my god, I screwed up. Oh my god, I just made a horrible blunder. I needed to research multimedia before swapping out Gaudi. I got my order backwards, because Gaudi would have made multimedia cost 4 science less. So I just threw away 4 science for absolutely no reason. I could have just done that and then switched leaders. So that was really goofy. But anyway, I waste some science. I upgrade to an Age 3 multimedia. And I actually have enough rocks left over to also build an Age 2 arena. The way that Mandela works, he gives you a culture for every happy face that is not necessary. It's not part of your culture generation, which ends up being critical, but it is generated at the end of the turn. For my last action, I grab the military buildup. I'm all in on the classic army, so I don't need to take modern infantry in my eyes, and I pass the turn. So Gangwon declares war on me. He's obviously not going to declare war on Napoleon here. What are his plans for this war? Well, he plays reserves for 4 food. He grabs the air forces, which just showed up, researches it, gets a worker, and makes an airplane. Classic war. You have an air force beefing up a classic army for an extra 13 strength just from that one airplane, and there's no way for me to bridge this gap. So a solid plan. He strikes at just the right time, and he grabs mechanized agriculture, which, given time, he might be able to drop down and use to generate some workers now that irrigation is stalled out. I'm obviously not happy about this. I wish I had Gandhi. Sakic goes. He flips a a colony, and I actually do try to win. I'm like, well, why the hell not? Like, let's try to get 9 rocks. But Sakic actually beats me on it. He plays just a rifleman with navigation and a defense card to take it. And now with all these rocks, he raises population, plays the patriotism, grabs rockets. I'm actually not sure why. Maybe it's just a deprival thing. He's got all these actions. So now no one is ever going to get rockets. And since Gangwon has cannon, what really matters is that I do not get rockets. So I'm never going to have any tactics that involve artillery. He grabs patriotism, plays it with Harvard College right away, makes another cannon, gets a warrior up there, finishes the Manhattan Project, gets his 10 points and his 13 strength. So now he's even stronger than Gangwon. He's, really just ready to let it rip. I might have even been lucky, honestly, he didn't have a war over culture. But he also decides to drop down Sid and give up the 6 strength from Napoleon so he can generate 4 culture from these 2 labs. And then he also has the entrenchments, which is 1 rifle and 2 cannon for 9 strength. So he's still actually ahead of Gangwon. He could have still declared war on me. And I guess I'm lucky that he didn't have it. I am also lucky in that when the time passes and my turn comes up, onto the card row flips Air Forces. This is actually kind of nuts because it's not just that Air Forces shows up, but it's that it shows up first. So I can take it for just 2 actions. That is an insane bit of luck. And this is what I'm talking about, where usually when someone has a war declared on them and then they win it, despite being the person who was declared upon, it's because of some kind of surprise like this. And this was a surprise, right? So Gangwon wasn't counting on Air Forces showing up in the 2nd spot. But it shows up, so I take it, I play it, I make a worker, I also make an airplane, and I copy the classic army, which just barely lets me beat Gangwon. So this is the 2nd game in a row where Gangwon declares war on me, and I end up beating him, although this is reasonable. He made a perfectly reasonable war, I think. I mean, it was just unlucky that airplanes showed up. If they had shown up here, I could have taken them, and I would have just had 1 action now instead of having 2. With the extra action, I'm able to take and research satellites. So that means I steal an extra 3 strength from Gangwon, so it's an extra 6-point swing for that 1 action. But you could argue that Gangwon should have predicted the fact that if airplanes did show up, I could make him and beat him. So you could call that a mistake. But I don't think that that was still a crazy thing or like a wild blunder or anything like that. Oh, I guess another thing to consider is since I have the castle, I am able to sacrifice a unit and get bonus strength. Since I was the defender, I get bonus strength for the unit. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that was a mistake. Maybe with that and the fact that I could take his classic army, and the fact that Air Forces showing up would be possible for me to take. Yeah, maybe Gangwon should have not declared that war on me. So I sacrifice a unit, I steal 18 strength from Gangwon, which is a 36-point swing against him. He is unfazed, he keeps on going like it's nobody's business. He grabs Chaplin, plays him, plays the Revolutionary Idea, which lets him make the movies. He blows up a temple and makes a movie theater, so he's generating just disgusting, absurd culture here, and he's, ready to keep on fighting. He takes patriotism, passes the turn. On Sakic's turn, he's just trying to, steal some rocks from me, but I did have 2 defense cards, 1 of each type, to block him, so he doesn't get to raid me. He develops democracy for some more culture, grabs reserves, plays him immediately thanks to Harvard for 4 food. He's using Harvard a lot, so credit to him for that. He raises population, makes another lab, which is another 2 science and 2 culture with Sid Meier, so his culture is also incredible. He grabs the engineering genius, which is a bit speculative, but, Hollywood and internet are still left to be had. Hollywood's not much, but the internet's right there, so maybe he's banking on nobody wanting the internet. And anyway, he has a bunch of actions to kill. What is there to really do? And he grabs Revolutionary Idea for 6 science, because why not? And that's the turn. So now in my turn, I am behind on strength again. I just need to rebuild this airplane. That's what I sacrificed to maximize my strength gain from Gangwon. I've got this military buildup, so the airplane is free. And I also develop opera here, because why not? I blow up a farm, which ends up being a critical decision. I decide, well, I'm not going to need this food anymore for the rest of the game. But you're going to see I should have actually blown up a mine. And it's also worth noting that I could have, since I have 8 rocks here, I could have played reserves for 4 food and actually just made a worker, instead of having to blow up a farm for 1. So I make my theater, which is giving me an extra 3 culture plus another 1 from Mandela. And I grab military theory because I will be able to research it next turn, and that may be necessary. I'm actually in the lead on strength, so I'm feeling okay about things. It's just a matter of making sure I don't get screwed on culture. And then on Gang 1's turn, he plays an event, and oh, there's the terrorism! There it is, finally showing up. Except because he declared war on me and lost a bunch of culture to me, I have a bunch of culture that I should not have. I should not have 18 culture. If I had 18 less and he had 18 more, I would be the person with the lowest culture. But because he made his 5,000 IQ losing war, he gets to take advantage of my terrorism, blowing up my extremely expensive H3 lab and library and one of Sakich's labs. So don't ever play terrorism. It's a terrible, horrible, evil card, and you are cursed if you play it. Anyways, he grabs a revolutionary idea and reserves. He blows up another lab and makes a library for 2 extra culture and some more science, passes the turn. And here we are, it's H4, and this is going to be the final round. Now the final round, Sakich plays an event. We have impact of population, which is a little good for me, but nothing super crazy. He makes the internet with the engineering genius. He makes it happen. First, he gets this down for some extra potential endgame scoring, finishes the internet up, and he actually finishes the game in pretty good shape. So you can see here, I'll let this pass over. At this point, he's in the lead on culture and definitely looks like he could win the game. On my turn, what is there for me to do? Well, I play an event for the points mostly. I don't care about this colony, so I let Sakich and Gang 1 fight it out. Sakich ends up getting it. I play the military theory in case that matters for points. And with my final 10 rocks, I make another opera. Now notice, if I had used the rocks for food the previous turn and made a worker, then I wouldn't have been able to make this opera this turn. I could have just made like a lab, and I would have made 2 less culture with it. But I would have had this farm here. And if I hadn't played terrorism, I'd have 2 less points, but I would also have this thing right here generating culture. So keep that in mind as we head into the end game. There's not much else for me to do. I just hate draft some cards and pass the turn. And it's Gang 1. So he plays reserves for 4 rocks. He makes a computer, disbands a knight that wasn't actually needed, makes an H3 lab, plays revolutionary idea, mechanized agriculture, gets his points for Nobel, patriotism. None of this stuff really matters that much, but watch what happens when we go into the final scoring. So it's really, really close, and the first thing that drops is impact of technology, which actually lets me almost catch up to Sakich. So I'm holding my breath here, seeing if I can get first place, and impact of culture drops. This is really, really awful. So Gang 1's getting 17 culture, Sakich has 14, and I have 11, but if I had this lab here, and if Mandela counted as actual culture, I would have had 16. But if I had had only 14, I still would have lost to Sakich because of tie breaks. It's kind of an annoying rule, but that's how that works. So it just kind of sucks that card was drawn. It just is really, really awful that this showed up to give Gang 1 14 and to give Sakich 7. So now, whereas a moment ago I was hoping to see if I can get first, now I would just be happy to beat Gang 1 on second. What shows up next is Impact of Harmony. This is often a bit of a wash event, and in this case, it is. We all get the same points from it. And the last event is Impact of Balance. Now this takes whatever you produce the least of, calculates how much of it you produce, and doubles it. Look at my civilization. I have a bunch of culture, 6 science, 6 rocks, and if I had kept this farm, I would have had 6 food. And then I would have made 12 points from this event, but instead I make only 6. So I should have kept that farm. If I'd blown up a mine, that would have dropped my rocks to 4, then I would have made 8. I still would have made 2 extra points from this event. And if I had used my reserves card, granted, then I wouldn't have made the opera, but, so it would have been a little bit complicated. But if you imagine all the factors, if I had not played terrorism, if I still had gotten the 3 culture from my H3 library, if I had the extra science on my last turn that I didn't throw away to research an extra thing and get the 4 culture from Nobel's passive, I could have easily been ahead of Gang 1. Also, that Crusades, where he stole 4 culture from me, that was decisive. This game was just an absolute heartbreaker, but I ended up in last place, though, you know, it did go well, and I did get really lucky in some spots. I also got unlucky in some other spots and made some mistakes, so it was a tough loss against 2 strong players. I was happy I could be competitive against them, but I was definitely sad that I lost. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.